Right, Cristo Ray students, welcome to your introduction to Vectr. So today we're going to start by actually building our own Cristo Ray logo in Vectr so that we can scale it up, scale it down, and do different things with it. So in order to do this, the first thing you're going to need to do is download the bitmap image. We're going to be creating a Vectr version of this bitmap image. So in order to download this, you just need to go to our Google Classroom. Under the Check for Understanding for today, you'll be able to download this image. So go ahead and do that. That'll be the first thing you need to do. And then once you have it downloaded, then you can go ahead and sign in to Vectr. So you'll need to create an account. Make sure you use your Google account. And then once you're in here, we're going to create a new file. All right. So the first thing that we are going to do in this new file is we're going to bring in our bitmap image so that we can reference it, so we can kind of make the same version Vectr file of the bitmap image. So we're going to have to go upload image, and then you'll need to find that logo in your downloads, and then you can go ahead and import that. And we'll move it to the very bottom left corner here because we're just going to be using this for reference. Okay, so again, this is just for reference. At the end, we're actually going to end up deleting this image, but we need it in here so we can kind of see what we're trying to make. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is actually make these blue boxes with the circle inside. And to do that, we're actually going to start by making just one. And in order to make the one, we actually have to make a box within a box. So we'll start by creating a rectangle in the top right corner. We'll make this rectangle. And then we need to set the dimensions, so we want it to be 100 by 100. So right now, this little link will change both of these if we change them. So we want to set them independent first, 100 by 100, and then we can lock them back together. So 100 by 100, that's perfect. That's our first rectangle. And then to choose the color, because you might have a different color, we'll use the eyedropper tool. So when you click on the eyedropper tool, it pulls whatever color you want. So if we want it to be this blue, all we have to do is choose that. And now we have our blue box that's 100 by 100. So to create just this outline of the box, we actually need to create a box on the inside, and then we'll combine those together. So it'll be like a box over a box combined together. So to do that, we'll create another rectangle. This time we want to change the color because we're going to be putting one over the other. So maybe make it green. It doesn't really matter because it's going to end up getting removed anyways. And then if we want a 10 by 10 pixel boundary here, what we have to do then is say, okay, well, if the original was 100 by 100, we have to take 10 off of each side, so that would be 80 by 80. Now notice how it changed over here is because I forgot to uncheck this link. If I uncheck the link and then make this 80, now we have an 80 by 80 box. Okay, so the position of this first box is at 0, 0. And so if we want to move this 10 over, if we want to have this 10 over and 10 down, we need this position to be at 10 and 10. Okay, so now that we have that box within a box, we can overlap both or click and highlight both, and then we can do a subtract. And now we have the outside of our box. Okay, so it's pretty easy to actually duplicate this because we need 3 of these. So if we just do duplicate. All right, so the first one we'll need down here. If you notice this current position, so it's giving you the position of the top left corner. If we want to move it down 10, all we need to do is move this Y position to 110. And now we have a 10 pixel space in between the boxes. And we can do the same thing here, duplicate. Again, if we want this to be over 10, if it's at X position of 100, if we make that 110, now we have a box that's moved over. Okay, so we've got our 3 boxes. The last thing we have to do before we can do the crown and the little triangle here is we have to add in this circle. And so this is going to be a little bit more challenging, but I have faith in you. I think we can do this. So we'll start by creating the actual ellipse itself. And I've done some testing, so I know these numbers. You'll have to trust me. When you're doing your own logo design, obviously you'll be able to do whatever numbers that you feel are perfect for it. But for ours, we need to make sure that this is unchecked, and we want our circle to be 140, our first circle, to be 140 by 140. Okay, so we've got that. And then in addition to that, so actually we'll move this to the top left so it's at 0, 0. And the only reason we do that is so that when we create our new second circle, which remember, when we're creating the one we're going to remove, we want to change the color of it. We can now make this 120 by 120. And then if we put it in between here, so we want it to be right on the outside, which should end up being at 10 and 10. Okay, so now all we have to do is just click and highlight only over your circles, so make sure it's just your circles, and we'll do that same subtract, and now we should have this circle ring. Okay, now the position of this circle ring, if we want it to be right in the middle here, and actually it looks like the color needs to be changed as well. So let's make sure we get the same color. There we go. So it needs to be in the exact center, and to make sure of that, again, I've done the positioning. You would have to do this with your logo, but if you make it at 35, you will be right in the center. Okay, so the last things that we need to do are just take out these little parts of the circle that we don't need. And so in order to do that, all we're going to do is just create objects, put them on top of the ones we created, and then just merge them together with a subtract. So we'll create a rectangle, and we want to make sure that it's covering up this entire row. So it's going to be snapping there. That's perfect. Snapping there. Good. And then what we want to do is we want to highlight both the circle and this line that we did. So boom, highlight those, and then we choose subtract. So we'll do the same thing over here. Highlight, make sure we're snapped to the two sides. Easily highlight over both and subtract. And then we'll do one final rectangle to take out the rest of this here. Again, highlight over both and subtract. Cool. So now we've got our 3 boxes with our circle on the inside and everything else taken out. The last 2 things we have to add in are the crown and our little triangle. So the triangle is easy. We just have to go to more shapes. And when we're in more shapes, all we do is we choose this right triangle. Start at the top, and you can see how it's snapping like perfect. So it'll snap right to it, and we'll snap on the bottom there. And the only other thing we need to do with this is to make the color our yellow. So we've got the bottom, and then I'm going to show you how to use the pencil tool or the pen tool. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to trace this crown because it's kind of a specific crown, and we want it to be exact, so we'll trace it. So to do that, we'll make this bitmap image a little bit bigger first. So we'll do 400 by 400. And you can see how we lose some of the resolution there, but it's no problem. We can still trace this, give it our best guess for where that outline is. So to do that, we'll use the pen tool, and we'll start at a corner, go down to the bottom here, over, to the top, back down here, and finish where we started. And now we can actually take this, move it. We need to actually change from border to background. So what we'll do is we'll choose the color for background. We'll make it the same as our triangle here, and we'll turn off the border. So now all we have to do is just position this. So we have to shrink it to make it the size that we want. So let's see, need to make it a little bit smaller here. Let's see. Down a little bit more. Boom, snap there. Snap there. Now we delete our old bitmap image, and the last thing we need to do is just group these all together. So we have, some different rectangular paths and our paths from all of these circles. If we just highlight them all, we right click and we group. Now you can see that we have one object that we can make bigger and smaller, and we can move around together. So here's the original at 210, if we wanted to make it 400, whoops, so before we do that, Control Z is to undo. If we want to make this 400, we need to lock in our dimensions, and then we can make it 400, and you see we don't lose any resolution. We could even go up to 600, still have perfect resolution there. And that is the beauty of a vector graphic. Now, another nice thing about this vector file is that if we exported it, and remember we can have some different file formats, but an SVG file, that's the vector graphic, that's actually what the laser cutter and our vinyl cutter interpret. So we could export this as an SVG and then cut out vinyl for a t-shirt, or maybe we could laser cut this or laser engrave this into some plastic. Lots of things that we could do with it once it's in this vector format. All right, we'll see you next class.